She traded herself for a place to stay, but the rancher gave her a home and a future she never dared to dream. A dry wind moved the quiet streets of Red Hollow, a small western town surrounded by wide plains and dusty hills. The town was peaceful, but it was not always welcoming to strangers. Late one afternoon, a young woman slowly walked into town. Her name was Clara Whitmore. Her boots were covered in dust from many days of travel, and the small suitcase she carried looked old and worn. She had been on the road for a long time, moving from one place to another, hoping to find somewhere she could finally rest. Clara stopped near the town square and looked around. People were busy with their daily work. Shopkeepers were closing their doors for the evening. Horses were tied near wooden posts, and a few townspeople chatted quietly outside a small store. But Clara felt like she did not belong there. She had already asked at 2 places for a room to stay, but both times the answer had been the same. Sorry, they said kindly but firmly. No work, no room. Clara understood. In towns like Red Hollow, everyone worked hard for what they had. No one had extra space for strangers who could not pay. She sat for a moment on a wooden bench and looked down at her suitcase. Inside it were only a few clothes and a small notebook. Her money had run out 2 days ago. For a moment, she felt tired and unsure about what to do next. But Clara had learned something during her travels. Giving up never helped. She stood again and decided to try one more place. At the edge of town, there was a long dirt road that led toward a wide ranch. Clara had noticed it when she first arrived. Wooden fences stretched far across the land, and a large red barn stood near a simple ranch house. Horses moved calmly in the fields. A small wooden sign near the gate read, "Turner Ranch." Clara took a deep breath and walked toward it. As she stepped through the open gate, she saw a man repairing part of the fence. He looked tall and strong, wearing a brown hat and a simple work shirt. His movements were calm and steady, like someone who had done the same work many times before. This was Caleb Turner, the owner of the ranch. He noticed Clara walking up the path and straightened up, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Afternoon," he said politely. Clara stopped a few steps away. She felt nervous, but she kept her voice steady. "Good afternoon," she replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Caleb looked at the dusty suitcase and the tired expression on her face. It was clear she had traveled far. "Passing through town?" he asked. Clara shook her head slightly. "Not exactly," she said. "I'm looking for work or a place to stay." Caleb listened quietly. Clara continued, choosing her words carefully. "I don't have money for a room," she admitted, "but I'm willing to work. Any kind of work. Cleaning, cooking, helping with chores, whatever needs to be done." She paused before adding one more thing. "I just need a place to stay for a while." Caleb thought about her words. The ranch always needed extra help, but most workers who came looking for jobs already had experience. Clara looked like someone who had spent more time traveling than working on a ranch. Still, there was something about the way she spoke. She sounded honest, and she did not ask for kindness, only a chance. Caleb leaned against the fence and looked out at the fields for a moment. The evening sun was beginning to lower in the sky, painting the land with warm golden light. Finally, he spoke. "There's always work on a ranch," he said, "but it's not easy work." Clara nodded quickly. "I'm not afraid of hard work." Caleb studied her face for a moment longer, making sure she meant it. Then he pointed toward a small wooden building near the barn. "That's the old bunkhouse," he said. "It's simple, but it's clean enough." Clara followed his gaze. "You can stay there," Caleb continued. "In the mornings, you help with chores. Feeding animals, cleaning stalls, helping around the ranch." Clara blinked in surprise. "You mean I can stay?" Caleb gave a small nod. "As long as you work like everyone else here." Relief slowly filled Clara's face. "Thank you," she said softly. Caleb picked up his tools again and returned to fixing the fence. "One more thing," he added calmly. Clara waited. "On this ranch, everyone works hard," he said, "but everyone is treated fair too." Clara looked around the ranch once more, the open land, the horses in the field, the quiet evening sky. For the first time in many weeks, she felt something she had almost forgotten, a small feeling of hope. She had come to Red Hollow, looking for nothing more than a place to sleep. But as she walked toward the bunkhouse, Clara did not know that this ranch would soon become something much more important in her life. Something she had never expected to find. The next morning at Turner Ranch began before the sun rose. A soft orange light slowly appeared over the hills, and the cool morning air moved across the open fields. The ranch was quiet at first, but soon the sound of animals and early work began to fill the land. Inside the small bunkhouse, Clara Whitmore woke up to the distant sound of horses and footsteps outside. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the long road, the dusty town of Red Hollow, and the kind rancher who had given her a chance. She quickly sat up. The room was simple, just as Caleb had said. There was a small bed, a wooden chair, and a tiny window that showed the wide fields outside. But to Clara, it felt safe and peaceful. She got dressed quickly and stepped outside. The ranch was already alive with activity. A few ranch hands were carrying tools, and one man was guiding horses toward the barn. Near the fence, Caleb Turner was filling a bucket with water. When he saw Clara walking toward him, he gave a small nod. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Clara replied. Caleb handed her a small bucket. "First job of the day," he said. "The chickens need feeding." Clara followed him toward a wooden coop behind the barn. Inside, several chickens moved around the yard, clucking softly. Caleb showed her where the feed was kept. "Just spread it around like this," he explained. Clara watched carefully and then tried it herself. The chickens quickly gathered around the food. Caleb nodded. "Good," he said. "After that, we checked the horses." Clara felt nervous. She had never worked on a ranch before, and everything was new to her. But she paid attention and tried her best to learn. As the morning continued, she helped with small chores, cleaning the barn floor, carrying water, and organizing tools. The work was harder than anything she had done before, but Clara did not complain. Some of the ranch hands watched her with curious eyes. One of them, a tall man named Lucas, leaned against a post and whispered to another worker. "Think she'll last a week?" he asked quietly. The other man shrugged. "Not sure. Ranch work isn't easy." Clara heard the quiet voices, but she pretended not to notice. Instead, she kept working. By midday, the sun was high in the sky, and Clara felt tired. Her arms ached from lifting buckets, and her boots were dusty again. Still, something inside her pushed her forward. She had asked for this chance, and she did not want to lose it. Later that afternoon, Caleb found her near the fence, trying to carry a small bundle of tools. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said calmly. Clara looked up. "I'm just trying to help," she replied. Caleb gave a small smile. "I can see that." He pointed toward the open field where several horses stood quietly. "Come with me," he said. Clara followed him. The horses lifted their heads as Caleb approached. They seemed calm and comfortable around him. "Ranch work isn't only about strength," Caleb explained. "You also need patience." He gently placed a saddle on one of the horses and tightened the strap. Clara watched carefully. "Have you ever ridden before?" Caleb asked. Clara shook her head. "No." Caleb thought for a moment. "Well," he said, "everyone starts somewhere." Slowly, he showed her how to stand beside the horse and hold the saddle. The horse moved a little, but Caleb spoke softly to calm it. After a few tries, Clara managed to climb up onto the saddle. For a moment, she felt nervous, but the horse stood still. "You're doing fine," Caleb said. Clara held the reins carefully. As the horse took a few slow steps forward, Clara felt something she had not felt in a long time: confidence. Over the next few days, Clara continued learning. Each morning brought new work: feeding animals, repairing fences, helping in the barn. Some days were tiring, but she began to understand the rhythm of ranch life. The ranch hands slowly started to respect her effort. Lucas, the tall worker who once doubted her, handed her a water bucket one afternoon. "You're working harder than most beginners," he admitted. Clara smiled slightly. "I'm trying." Little by little, the ranch began to feel different to her. It no longer felt like a temporary stop on a long journey. Instead, it felt like a place where she was slowly finding her place. One evening, As the sun began to set behind the hills, Clara stood near the fence and watched the golden light spread across the fields. Caleb walked over and stood beside her. "You're learning quickly," he said. Clara looked out across the ranch. "I never thought I could do work like this," she admitted. Caleb looked across the land he had spent years caring for. "Sometimes people surprise themselves," he said. Clara smiled softly. For the first time in many months, her life felt steady. Several weeks passed at Turner Ranch, and life slowly settled into a steady rhythm. Each morning began with the soft light of sunrise and the sound of animals waking across the fields. For Clara Whitmore, the ranch no longer felt strange or unfamiliar. She had learned how to feed the chickens, clean the barn, and ride a horse across the open land. Her hands were stronger now, and she moved around the ranch with more confidence than before. The other ranch hands had also begun to accept her as part of the team. One warm afternoon, Clara was helping Lucas repair part of a wooden fence near the far field. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze moved through the tall grass. Lucas placed another board against the fence and looked at Clara. "You're getting the hang of this," he said. Clara smiled. "I'm still learning," she replied. Just then, a younger ranch worker named Ben rode quickly toward them on horseback. He stopped near the fence and spoke with a worried voice. "Lucas, Clara, Caleb is calling everyone back to the ranch house." Lucas frowned slightly. "Did something happen?" Ben pointed toward the distant hills. "Dark clouds are moving this way," he said. "Looks like a big storm might arrive tonight." Clara looked toward the horizon. Far in the distance, thick gray clouds were slowly forming above the hills. Lucas placed the hammer down. "We better head back," he said. When they returned to the main ranch yard, several ranch hands were already gathered. Caleb Turner stood near the barn, studying the sky carefully. As everyone arrived, Caleb spoke calmly. "A strong storm may pass through the valley tonight," he explained. "We need to make sure everything is ready before it arrives." Storms were not unusual in the region, but they could still cause problems. Heavy rain and strong winds could damage fences and scatter cattle across the wide land. The workers quickly began preparing the ranch. Some secured the barn doors. Others moved equipment into safe places. A few workers rode out into the fields to guide the cattle closer to the main ranch area. Clara helped carry tools and ropes while listening carefully to Caleb's instructions. The sky slowly grew darker as the afternoon passed. Later that evening, the wind began to blow stronger. Dust moved across the ground, and the clouds thickened above the valley. The ranch workers finished most of their preparations and gathered near the barn. Caleb looked across the land. "Good work, everyone," he said. But just then, Lucas returned from a far field with concerning news. "Some of the cattle didn't make it back before the wind picked up," he reported. "They moved toward the hills." Caleb frowned slightly. If the cattle stayed out in the storm, they might wander too far from the ranch. Clara listened carefully. During the past weeks, she had spent time riding along the edges of the ranch land. She had quietly noticed something while helping repair fences near the hills. She stepped forward. "I might know a way to guide them back," she said. The group turned toward her. Caleb looked curious. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Clara pointed toward the western hills. "There's a narrow path near the canyon," she explained. "I saw it while fixing the fence last week. The path leads back toward the lower field behind the barn." Lucas thought for a moment. "That path might work," he said slowly. Clara continued. "If we ride around the hill and guide the cattle along that path, they should naturally move toward the lower field." The workers exchanged thoughtful looks. Caleb studied the direction Clara pointed to. Finally, he nodded. "It's worth trying." A small group quickly prepared their horses. Clara rode beside Caleb and Lucas as they headed toward the hills. The wind moved strongly across the open land, but the group stayed calm and focused. After riding for a while, they spotted the scattered cattle moving slowly across the grass. Clara pointed toward the narrow canyon path. "There," she said. The group carefully guided the cattle in that direction. Instead of rushing, they moved patiently, allowing the animals to follow the natural path between the hills. Slowly but surely, the cattle began moving down the narrow trail. After some time, the path opened into the lower field behind the ranch. By the time the first drops of rain began falling from the sky, the cattle had safely returned. Back at the ranch, the other workers watched with relief as the herd entered the field. Lucas let out a long breath. "That worked better than I expected," he admitted. Caleb turned toward Clara. "You noticed that path while working?" Clara nodded. "I try to pay attention to the land," she said quietly. Caleb gave a small approving smile. "That's an important skill on a ranch." The rain began falling steadily, but everything was now safe. As the workers guided the cattle into shelter, Clara looked across the ranch with quiet pride. For the first time since arriving in Red Hollow, she realized something important. She was no longer just a traveler who needed help. She had become someone who could truly help others. The storm passed during the night. By morning, the sky above Turner Ranch was clear again. Fresh sunlight spread across the wide fields, and the air smelled clean after the rain. Small drops of water still rested on the wooden fences and tall grass. The ranch slowly came back to life. Workers stepped outside the barn, stretching and looking around to check if everything was safe. Horses moved calmly in the fields, and the cattle grazed quietly in the lower pasture. The storm had been strong, but thanks to everyone's work, the ranch was in good shape. Most importantly, the cattle were safe. Near the barn, Clara Whitmore carried a bucket of water toward the horses. She moved carefully through the muddy ground, trying not to slip. As she worked, Lucas walked over with a small smile. "You did good yesterday," he said. Clara looked surprised. "You really think so?" Lucas nodded. "That path you remembered helped bring the cattle back quickly. Without it, we might have spent hours searching the hills." Clara looked down shyly. "I just remembered what I saw while fixing the fence," she said. Lucas chuckled. "Still counts as smart thinking." Not far away, Caleb Turner stood near the fence, checking the fields. He had watched the events of the night carefully, and he had noticed how calm and confident Clara had been. He walked toward her. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Clara replied. Caleb looked toward the cattle, grazing peacefully. "Thanks to your idea, everything worked out well," he said. Clara felt a little embarrassed. "I only helped a little." Caleb shook his head gently. "Sometimes a small idea makes a big difference." Clara smiled softly and returned to her work. Over the next few weeks, life at the ranch continued as usual. The fences were repaired, the fields were cleaned, and the animals were healthy. But something had changed. The ranch workers no longer saw Clara as a newcomer who might leave at any moment. They now trusted her and often asked for her help with different tasks. Clara also felt more confident. She rode horses across the fields, helped organize supplies, and sometimes even guided the younger workers who were still learning ranch work. Little by little, the ranch had become her home. One quiet evening, the sky turned golden as the sun slowly began to set behind the hills. The land looked peaceful, glowing with warm light. Clara stood near the fence, watching the horses move calmly across the pasture. Caleb walked over and stood beside her. For a moment, they both looked across the land in silence. "This ranch has changed a lot over the years," Caleb said thoughtfully. Clara listened. "When I first started it," he continued, "it was just a small piece of land and a few animals. It took many years of hard work to grow it into what it is today." Clara looked across the wide fields. "It's beautiful," she said. Caleb nodded slowly. "It is." Then he turned toward her. "You've worked hard since the day you arrived," he said. Clara felt a little nervous. "I only did what you asked," she replied. Caleb shook his head. "You did more than that." He looked back toward the barn and the fields where the workers moved around. "You helped the ranch when we needed it," he continued. "You learn quickly, and you care about this place." Clara felt her heart beat a little faster. Caleb spoke again, his voice calm but serious. "When you first came here, you asked for a place to stay for a while." Clara nodded. "Yes." Caleb smiled slightly. "Well, I think you've earned more than that." Clara looked confused. "What do you mean?" Caleb pointed toward the land around them. "This ranch always needs someone who understands it," he explained. "Someone who pays attention to the land, the animals, and the people working here." He paused for a moment. "I'd like you to stay here," he said. not just as a worker passing through. Clara's eyes widened slightly. You mean permanently? Caleb nodded. You could help manage the ranch with me, he said. There's always work to do, and I think you'd be good at it. For a moment, Clara could not speak. When she had first arrived in Red Hollow, she had only hoped to find a place to sleep for a few nights. She had never imagined something like this. A real place, a real future. She looked across the fields once more. The barn, the horses, the workers laughing near the gate, and the wide open land that now felt familiar. Then she looked back at Caleb. I would like that, she said softly. Caleb smiled. The sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, leaving the sky filled with soft evening colors. As the lights of the ranch house turned on and the workers finished their day, Clara realized something she had never thought possible. She had come to the ranch with nothing but a suitcase and a tired heart, but now she had something